is a big win. Okay, a big win here in Massachusetts for those that work for Uber and Lyft. Now, for those who are not aware, if you've ever driven for Uber and Lyft, you know that these drivers have been complaining for quite some time about not having benefits, not receiving the pay that they should receive. And believe it or not, although some people drive for Uber and Lyft as a part-time gig, there are a couple of Uber and Lyft drivers that I've met that do this full time. Sometimes it may be people that are retired and they say, you know what, I'm just going to do this to make extra money and that kind of thing. And sometimes it's people that are not retired, like they just do this full time and this is their gig. Well, Uber and Lyft did not want to pay these drivers what they were owed, and they also didn't want to give them benefits. And so there was a case here in Massachusetts where things did not work out in Uber and Lyft's favor, but it did work out in the driver's favor. Let's get into this. This is a big win. Uber and Lyft agreed to pay drivers $32.50 per hour in a Massachusetts settlement. Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell says drivers for Uber and Lyft will earn a minimum pay standard of $32.50 per hour under a settlement. So, for those who are not aware, the minimum wage in Massachusetts is $15 an hour. So $32.50, it's pretty good. It's still not enough an hour here to have like a decent standard of living, but we'll get into everything that the drivers received. Drivers for Uber and Lyft will earn a minimum pay standard of $32.50 an hour under the settlement announced on Thursday. The two companies will also be required to pay a combined $175 million to the state to resolve allegations that the companies violated Massachusetts wage and hour laws, a substantial majority of which will be distributed to current and former drivers. So even those drivers that quit, they also will benefit from this as well. Campbell said the settlement resolves her office's year-long litigation against the two companies and stops the threat of their attempt to rewrite state employment law by a proposed 2024 ballot initiative. Let's highlight ballot initiative. See, ladies and gentlemen, this is why ballot initiatives are so important. I know it's not a popular topic. It's not a sexy topic, but this is direct democracy where the voters actually can make a decision on their own. When you go to vote, you're voting on the questions, not your legislators that you have. You're voting on this. This is why, for those who say they're just going to sit on the couch because they don't want to vote for the president, if you live in a ballot initiative state, you should still show up to vote for the ballot measures. This is very important. So that question would have resulted in drivers receiving inadequate protections and earning standard that would not guarantee minimum wage. For years, these companies have underpaid their drivers and denied them basic benefits. Today's agreement holds Uber and Lyft accountable and provides their drivers for the very first time in Massachusetts guaranteed minimum pay, paid sick leave, occupational accident insurance, and health care stipends. So remember, because this is like a gig job, there was no paid sick leave. If you're sick, you're just not driving that day and you're not paid for it. It's similar to some of the contract positions. I had a contract position before. I didn't get paid sick leave. I didn't get paid vacation. So if I took time off, I just didn't get paid. And the gig economy has like increased. It's become more popular. And that's why I push back on the Biden administration when they say they created a lot of jobs. That's why I push back and say, what are those jobs? Because a lot of the job announcements that I see that are advertised are contract positions or temp positions that don't offer any benefits. Democratic Governor Maura Healey said the settlement delivers historic wages and benefits to right the wrongs of the past and ensure drivers are paid fairly going forward. In a statement, Lyft said the agreement resolves a lawsuit that recently went to trial and avoids the need for the ballot initiative campaign this November. More important, It is a major victory in a multi-year campaign by Bay State drivers to secure their right to remain independent while gaining access to new benefits. Uber also released a statement calling the agreement an example of what independent, flexible work with dignity should look like in the 21st century. So think about this for a second. This happened in Massachusetts, but this could spread. I could see this spreading to other states, particularly probably California would probably be next, or New York. That's how it tends to go. I don't know why it just goes that way, but I could see this spreading to other states. And I can also see this spreading to other industries, because this now can set a precedent for the gig economy, because now this can empower other gig employees to say, wait a minute, I think we need, paid leave. I think we need sick leave. I think we need vacation time. I think we need some type of health insurance. So this can set a precedent. It goes on to say, in taking this opportunity, we've resolved historical liabilities by constructing a new operating model that balances both flexibility and benefits. This allows both Uber and Massachusetts to move forward in a way that reflects what drivers want and demonstrates to other states what's possible to achieve. The companies were pushing a ballot question that would classify drivers as independent contractors eligible for some benefits. But Campbell said the settlement stops the threat of the ballot question. A competing ballot question seeks to give drivers the right to unionize in Massachusetts. So does everybody see what's happening here? Basically, to make a long story short, Andrea Campbell came in and said, let's go ahead and solve this issue with Uber and Lyft. Otherwise, we have that ballot measure that may go forward this November, and all these other drivers may decide to unionize. So what this shows you is that when they want to do something for the workers, they can do something for the workers. See how quickly they were able to act? Drivers will now earn 1 hour of sick day pay for every 30 hours worked, up to a maximum of 40 hours per year. As part of the agreement, Uber and Lyft must update their driver applications so drivers are able to view and claim their sick leave directly in the app. Drivers will also receive a stipend to buy into the state's paid family and medical leave program. Now, I think some people before in the past, they were asking me, doesn't Massachusetts have universal health care? No, we don't. We have something called Mass Health, but it's means tested. You have to meet a certain income requirement to qualify for Mass Health. That is actually, I guess that is the baby, or not the baby. That is basically the mother of Obamacare. Mass Health originally was Romney Care in the state. And then next thing you know, that's where Obamacare comes from. It goes on to say, under the deal, Uber and Lyft will also allow drivers to pool together their hours driving for the two companies to obtain access to health insurance stipend. Anyone who drives for more than 15 hours per week for either or both companies will be able to earn a health insurance stipend to pay for a plan on the Massachusetts Health Connector. That's Mass Health. So obviously, I believe that everybody should have health care regardless. And you wouldn't run into the situation if our health insurance was not tied to our employer. We would not have the situation. Think about that for a second. Some people want to do gig employment. Some people don't want to be a permanent employee at a company. Some people prefer to be freelance or contract. I've actually heard people say that. So imagine if we did have universal healthcare in this country, more people could be free to do that. Right now, they can't. Drivers will be eligible for occupational accident insurance paid by the companies for up to $1 million in coverage for work-related injuries. Yeah, guess what? When you're driving for Uber or Lyft, you could have an accident and it may not be your fault. And someone needs to pay for that, right? Someone needs to cover that. The agreement also requires the companies to provide drivers with key information about the length of a trip, the destination, and expected earnings before they are expected to accept a ride. This is a big one. This right here. Have you ever requested an Uber or a Lyft and they accept, and then the next thing you know, they deny the ride? And sometimes if you're going too far, the driver may not want to do that. Now it sounds like they're going to give them the ability to see the length of the trip and the destination and how much they're going to earn for it before they accept the ride. I feel like they should have done that all along. The companies are barred from discriminating against drivers based on race, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, and other protected identities, and cannot retaliate against drivers who have filed a complaint about the companies with the Attorney General's office. So things are changing. Some things are changing. Do I think there can be more done? Absolutely. But this is making a buzz already. And I want to tell you how this is making a buzz, because Fisher Phillips, they announced this on their website. And look at the title. Look at the headline. Uber and Lyft settlement provides new precedent for the gig economy and major benefits for Massachusetts drivers. Key employer takeaways. Now, obviously, Fisher Phillips is not a part of Uber or Lyft. This is a different company, but Fisher Phillips is now sounding the alarm. And they're letting people know, hello, just letting you know that now there could be a new precedent for gig workers. A little bit about the case background. They mentioned this here. This settlement marks the culmination of a multi-year litigation effort by Massachusetts Attorney General's office against rideshare giants. State prosecutors allege multiple violations of Massachusetts wage and hour laws. It goes on to say, specifically, they allege that the rideshare companies could not meet the difficult three-part classification test set out by statute. In Massachusetts, every individual who performs services for another party is classified as an employee unless the individual is free from the alleged employer's direction or control. The services the worker performs are outside the usual course of the employer's business, and the worker is customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, or business of the same nature as the service performed for the party. Given the difficulty in establishing independent contractor status, the Attorney General's office argued that Uber and Lyft drivers should be classified as employees, entitling them to benefits and protections afforded by Massachusetts employment and wage and hour laws. Now, one con about this is that now that they are going to offer the drivers benefits, the cost of Uber and Lyft rides is probably going to increase a little bit. But I think it's worth it to give people benefits. It's just a reality. And then it goes on to say here, the benefits again, paid sick leave, paid sick time, paid family and medical leave. For those who don't know, this is a new initiative here in Massachusetts. I believe it started, I want to say maybe last year. That now everyone here is entitled to paid family and medical leave. That was a big one. That came about during the pandemic. That's where that came from, by the way. So that's a big one. Health insurance, I explained that one. Although it's more of a health insurance stipend if they drive for more than 15 hours a week, which I think most drivers do. And occupational accident insurance, which is very important. They can receive up to $1 million in coverage for work-related injuries. So here's something that I want to pick your brain about. I'm thinking about all of the drivers that drive taxis, all of the taxi drivers in Boston. They also receive benefits. And now I'm starting to wonder if some of them will be willing to leave the cab company and drive for Uber and Lyft now that they're offering benefits. Because the reality is you can make more with Uber and Lyft nowadays I rarely see people in Boston calling a cab. Didn't always used to be that way. But I remember some nights leaving the club, you're leaving late or you're leaving the bar late, and there would be cabs right there on the street and they just would not pick people up. They didn't like to pick up drunk people. The cabs did not like to pick up drunk people, but Uber and Lyft would. And that's what started the increase for business for Uber and Lyft drivers, because they would do that. Some of the taxi drivers didn't want to drive a certain distance. They're like, oh, that's out of my area. I don't want to go there. Stuff like that. But the Uber and Lyft drivers would. So it makes you wonder what's going to happen moving forward for gig workers. I do believe this is going to be a precedent, and we'll just have to wait and see. Interesting times, fam. Interesting times. Goliath said they tried to hire me and I said no. I hear you. I couldn't do it, man. And I've had friends that have driven for Uber and Lyft part-time. I couldn't do it. They told me some stories, especially the ones like if you're driving for Uber and Lyft on a Friday or Saturday night, all you have to do is drive around downtown or Back Bay area where a lot of people go out to the bars and the theater district where people hit up the clubs and stuff like that. If you drive, just hang around in that area on a Friday and a Saturday night, you can make a lot of money. You can make a lot of money. People in Boston love to drink. They love to drink. Let's go to some of the comments here. Dayman said, I still call cabs. I hate installing new apps on my phone. You're like my dad, Dayman. My dad does not like to install new apps on his phone. I said, Dad, why do you have a smartphone? Why do you have a smartphone? You don't want to install any apps. What's happening here? Robert says, taxis got screwed by these gig companies, maybe. I agree that. And also, like in New York City, like cab drivers have to buy a medallion. Like they have to pay for that medallion in order to be able to drive a cab in New York. And those medallions are expensive. Lorez said, these are good, but if Uber and Lyft is happy, it's still bad. I hear where you're coming from with that. Oh my God. Oh my God. I was going to go to another one. Oh, yeah. Danny said it's brutal on your car, too. Right. Because you are driving, you're putting a lot of miles on your car. So you are going to have to pay for maintenance on your car as well. Yes. Automatic selector. They want to keep puke off the back seat. Yes. So I've heard stories. I've heard about people puking in like Uber and Lyft cabs, like when they're picked up from the bar. I've heard some wild stories, man. I've heard people, drivers say that they had people get into the cab when they were drunk. And they were obviously supposed to go to one destination, and they would ask the Uber driver, can you stop and go through the drive-through? I'm hungry. Aaron said, I got into a Chicago cab once with a head wound. I bled all over the back seat, I think. Oh my God, Aaron, what were you doing? Wendy Williams says, how are you doing? I'm like, what were you doing? What were you doing? Benny Hill says, LOL, no pukers allowed. I hear you. I wouldn't want to clean it up. I would want to clean it up. Sabby Bites. This is bringing back bad memories when I drove Uber in crazy Athens, Georgia. That's the University of Georgia is there, right? So you had a lot of the college students. Let's take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Oh man, the Uber stories. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. It didn't spread to New York, Sabby, but started with New York. Massachusetts Attorney General took the same action as New York AG Letitia James took last year with the same results. I keep saying the fight is in the states, y'all. All right, well, there you go. Well, then we copied. Yes. EMK, drunk frat boys. Yes. You guys know what I'm talking about. All of you know. You've had some experiences. Plus, you want to hear something funny? When I first moved to Boston, I remember the first time I took a cab and all I wanted to do was to go to TD Garden. For those who don't know, TD Garden used to be called the Garden, is also called Boston Garden at one point, but that's where the Celtics play. That's where the Bruins play. Anyway, I was going to a Celtics game. And I get into the cab and I say, could you take me to the TD Garden? And he said, where is that? I was like, really? You're the cab driver. It's like, that's one of the most popular landmarks. You should know where the TD Garden is. You know, it's just stuff like that. I don't know. It's a hot mess.